Hi everyone, you're all very welcome to the food and drink opportunity before, during and after a meal with Ron Zacapa, with myself, Mark Moriarty, as the Diageo head chef in residence. We're going to be talking through a great panel today where we'll be discussing the versatility of Zacapa at home coming up to the holiday season, and also the potential of Zacapa in your restaurant or bar. And I'll be giving you a couple of examples from what we did over here in the greenhouse in Dublin a little later on. I want to talk about Zacapa and how it's a great option as a dark spirit coming into the holiday season if you're having it at home. Also to discuss and showcase the quality of Zacapa and how it's made, and how we can use that in our restaurants and bars to give a bit extra narrative to the customer like we've done here in Dublin. And then we're going to be hopefully inspiring you with some beautiful serves, both in the form of cocktails and some beautiful food from myself and our other chef, Chef Grace Ramirez. Please note that there will be a takeaway from this if you've joined up to the session. So afterwards you will be getting not only the recording, but also the recipes. So everyone in their 3 recipes have done a signature one that you can take away and make at home. You can Instagram, you can send it to us, tell us if you like it, tell us if you don't. And then we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end, which is very important. So if you have any comments or questions throughout, just stick them in the Q&A or the chat there, and we'll get to them at the very end, because we will be joined by a very special guest in the Ron Zacapa Master Blender, Lorena Vasquez. So she is ready and waiting. Without further ado, I will introduce our guests. First of all, from the US side, we have amazing bartender Lynnette Marrero, who oversees the bar program at Lama Inn, as well as being a philanthropist and entrepreneur. And she works as one of our Zacapa USA ambassadors. We have Chef Grace Ramirez, another Zacapa USA ambassador. She is a renowned chef, author, and TV host who has created some fabulous recipes, which we'll be showcasing to you earlier with that Latina flair. We have myself, Mark Moriarty, as I said, the chef in residence with Diageo, also sous chef at the 2 Michelin-star Greenhouse restaurant in Dublin. And I work extensively across all the Diageo brands, and in particular with Zacapa. And last but not least, our brilliant global cocktailian and world-class ambassador, Lauren Mote, who, as always, knows all things in and out when it comes to cocktails and Zacapa, and she'll be updating us and talking us through some amazing serves. So without further ado, Lauren, I'm going to go to you first, just to give a brief overview of your thoughts on Zacapa and what makes it so special.
As a dark spirit aficionado and lover already, one of the things that I love the most about Zacapa is that there are really no rules. I mean, we're all here on this call today to give guidelines, pointers, best practices of things that have worked for us, maybe flavor profiles that have been very familiar for people to work with. But then I think what's most interesting about this is how we can take classic recipe designs that normally call for brown spirits, whether that's single malts or bourbon or other rums, and be able to slide Zacapa in as a perfect replacement. But of course, we can't stop there because of how many rums are blended together, the number of casks that have touched this liquid, the virgin sugarcane syrup that is used instead of molasses to make the rum. It opens up the world of creativity and imagination in ways that we could have only hoped. And for me, you're going to see today in some of the cocktails, I'm steering away from doing the classic pairings like the caramel, the chocolate, the coffee, and I'm moving into some sort of stranger pairings that really do work. And we'll explain more about that later, like olives, funky apples, not just apple liqueurs, but Calvados style, and focusing on maybe other citrus fruits, sherry. There's lots of really cool things happening. So I don't want to reveal too much, but I think I did that in 2 minutes, 15 seconds, and now I'm done.
Even less. That's why we always have Lauren on these sessions. I'll throw that to you, Lynnette, with a question, actually. Probably your most memorable Zacapa serve that you've had.
Oh, I actually just found this pairing menu that we executed at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans with Chef Nina Compton, whose food is so beautiful. And I think it kind of embodies a bit of to me, her food reminds me of Zacapa because it is definitely rooted in Latin heritage and culture, but then has all these other nuances that can translate across different food categories. So she did this incredible meal for us that was influenced obviously by New Orleans, by Caribbean flavors, but also with her French culinary background. And we had this one pairing that was it was playing with textures and flavors, and it was a tea that was infused with lemongrass and lemon verbena, both, and then some lemon, a lemon cordial, and Zacapa. And it was really simple, and it was chilled, but we served it with dry ice. So when people got it, it was like smoking and steaming. And the food pairing that it went with was just so perfect. And Lorena just was there the whole time talking through the different pairings that we did, which that's, I find the access we have to our master blender is one of the special parts of Zacapa Rum, and why I believe the trade feels so connected to it, because we actually get to meet the maker. And Lorena has been around all the world-class events, and she's really open. And when you get access to her way she thinks about flavor pairings and putting this together, I think we learn so much in just how she crafts Zacapa, can teach anyone to build drinks based on what she's doing every day. So I just find it so much inspiration from her. And that's why Zacapa is just a beautiful spirit.
I think that's part of the reason why we're here today with two chefs and two bartenders, was from the first time I met Lorena, and her obvious knowledge of Zacapa and creating beautiful rum, but her interest in chefs and in cooking. And that it kind of goes hand in hand with something like Zacapa. So it made sense to bring the food in and put them together. From a chef's point of view, for me as well, Zacapa is one of those things that it's so balanced. It has that perfect balance of full circle of sweetness, acidity, and that caramel note in the background. And that makes it one of the easiest to play with from a food point of view. As well as that, I didn't know until 3 years ago when I came into the world of Zacapa, was the history and the story behind it. And that idea of that it's aged above the clouds, and the Solera system over 23 years, and you're going through ex-American whiskey and sherry barrels, and the virgin sugar cane in the basis, and that they even derive the yeast to distill the base rum from pineapple leaf. And for me, that's just all this, it starts all these creative processes that you can adapt to the food that tell this story, because there's such a range of flavors then that can be used to make something delicious. And it's again something when we have Zacapa in the restaurant that we tell the customers. It's not just a rum. We actually tell the story behind it, as well as why we might be putting a certain dish with it. That makes it extremely versatile. And at the end of the day, it's extremely delicious. I might throw to you there, Grace, as well, on from a chef in the US side. And I know we've done many events together, and you've worked a lot with Lynnette and Lorena. What's the most special thing for you when it comes to Zacapa?
First of all, I think that the team, everything about Zacapa is so special, and the team behind Zacapa, not only Lorena, but you guys, it's just such a pleasure to work with and get to play with flavors and food and such a beautiful spirit like Zacapa, and I think that for me, first of all, it's a personal thing. First and foremost, Zacapa is done by a beautiful woman. And I think Lorena, as you know, she loves us chefs and she loves to cook. And I think she designed a rum that all she did was create layers and layers and layers of flavors. That's why we have so many tasting notes. And that's why the spirit pairs so well with food, and it's so versatile because it is thought out. It's so balanced and it goes so well with so many different dishes. But to me, it's been interesting because I had, even before I started working with Zacapa, I was already pairing Zacapa with my food, because I tend to cook Latin food, and not necessarily does Zacapa go with Latin dishes, but it was just the brightness of my dishes, and that sweet, the spice, and all these different layers of flavor that is like an explosion of flavor in your mouth was perfectly, it's like a party in your mouth, and then you throw Zacapa in there, and then it's like, oh, okay. So and now that I have the pleasure to be working with the team, I think about it as this perfect blend and marriage of flavors, that it's all about highlighting not only the dish, but then making the spirit shine. I personally don't have one dish that goes really well with Zacapa that I love, because I have too many. But it is a spirit that you normally think of rum, and you normally think of, oh, I'll have it with a Coca-Cola, or I'll have it, or I have it neat, but I don't really know what to do with it. And I think that Zacapa is so versatile. But my favorite way of having Zacapa, especially with food, is most of the times just neat, or with very little, like an old fashioned or like a Manhattan, that it makes the spirit shine.
Yeah, and that's what I know we spoke about it before many times last year, was when it comes to brown spirits in particular, it's so balanced and so versatile, which makes it, for me, the perfect brand when it comes to food, either at home or in the restaurant. Which brings me to my next point, and I'm looking at Lauren in the top left of my screen, is that with all this talk of food and drink, we better show you some of what we've come up with. And I'll mention again, any questions or any comments you have as we go through, get them in the chat so we can come to them at the end. Tell Lauren what you think of her drinks, preferably, as I share the screen.
Don't be mean though. Be sweet.
So I'll leave it over to you, Lauren.
Okay, so this is fun. I love making aperitif style drinks that might inspire people in a different direction than maybe where they came from before. So I've got 3 drinks to share with you today, and this is the first one. This is called, quite simply, the Zacapa aperitif. Now, what I love so much about this drink is it reminds me of 2 classic drinks that I really quite like, the Adonis and also the Bamboo, which are great drinks. Both drinks show up incredibly well with aromatized wines, like whether that's vermouth or sherry. And so that really amplifies those flavors of Zacapa already, which have been aged above the clouds in multiple barrels that highlight some of those flavors, including sherry barrels. So with this, you see the olives on the side. Now, I can't preface this enough. Before I tell you what's in the drink, if you're going to serve olives with a drink, can I quote Dale DeGroff here? Why would you take a room temperature olive and stick it into a perfectly cold drink? So part 1, always serve your olives on the side unless they are incredibly cold. Now, in that little cup on the side, these are Castelvetrano olives. You can use Cerignola olives, whatever olives you feel, as long as they have a bit of crunch to them and they're fresh and they're cold. Now, what I love so much about pairing olives in with this drink, because it is a blend of Zacapa with Amontillado sherry, with red vermouth, with orange curacao, some Moroccan inspired bitters, and coconut flour sugar. Now, each layer of this can be replaced with whatever you have on hand. I'm using coconut flour sugar because it makes sense to me to bring those flavors together with a slightly lower glycemic index sweetener. But if you have honey, you have maple syrup, you have, date honey, whatever it is, you can use that in place. So it's equal parts of the Zacapa, Amontillado sherry, which is medium dry, and red vermouth, and then just like a half portion of curacao. So whether you have triple sec, you have something more like Cointreau, a little higher end. It's that bitter orange that really helps to bring those flavors together. Then of course, the Moroccan lemon bitters just make it a beautiful bloomed spice palette. I really want everyone to not judge this book by its cover. Try it with the olives. Again, that's Cerignola, Castelvetrano, something crunchy and cold just to have in between. And it's nice when you're doing a pour like this, rather than serving everything that's in a cold temperature, perfectly stirred already in a giant glass. Why not put it in a smaller bottle on the side? This is part of like that steps of service of doing something a little bit extra, where you serve an appropriately sized cocktail in a smaller glass, like a Nick and Nora or otherwise, and then just refill as you go to make sure that temperature stays true all the way across.
Strikes me as well as something, the side piece, it adds so much value with very little extra effort, be it at home or in the restaurant.
Oh, it's me again. We're doing all of mine. Next. See, I did that. I put my papers to the side. I'm like, Eureka, I've done it. So this next one is, and yes, those are my hands and of course my tattoo. So I knew that was me. So this is a Zacapa tea punch. Another thing which could be quite cool in terms of adding ingredients together, doing this extra mile service piece. This is a really cool vessel. This is a single serve teacup and pot that fits right on top. So it becomes a single serve vessel, and you can find them all over Amazon, any like local sort of pottery shop or like a Pier, I think Pier 1 went out of business, but I think any of those like sort of China knickknack shops, they have these really cool like single service pieces, and I think it's really quite neat. So you can serve this either hot or cold. So we're showing Zacapa now in a different way, and I'm going into teas, apples. I use sherry a lot in the same way that bartenders have been using like red vermouth as like the automatic pour to lengthen specific drinks like the Manhattan or the Negroni, the Boulevardier. I use sherry in sort of that same way. So this is Zacapa 23 with good quality apple liqueur. Please don't put sourpuss in this cocktail. I'm talking like that really good, like local apple liqueur that you might have access to in your town or your state, your city, wherever. Or it's just getting that really good quality German apple liqueur, which is available all over the world, which is great. I'm using a sweetener, maple syrup this time. I just love the way that maple works with Zacapa and also with tea. A little bit of lemon juice just to balance it out, and then with tea. Now you can use whatever tea you like. I've used Darjeeling in this case because I love the flavor of this black tea. It's incredibly earthy and doesn't taste commercial, if that makes sense. It doesn't taste like you've just brewed the same, cup of red rose tea over and over again. It tastes like a time and place, from Asia, which I love. So cold brew, very easy. You just take 7 tea bags or 20 grams of loose leaf tea, put it into a liter of cold water or bottled or filtered water, and then leave it in your fridge to infuse just gently for 24 hours. The next day, strain that out. And you've got this amazing cold brew tea that you can use for any application, and especially for this. I use a bit of bitters, cranberry bitters in this case. Mark is like really trigger happy here with the with the PowerPoint. He's like, move on, time to move on. So quickly, Mark, before we move on to this last cocktail, if you want to heat up the mixture, put everything into a saucepan and then just bring it up to a slow simmer and then pour it into the teapot. Cold, you would just add all the ingredients chilled into the teapot, and as you go, you pour away. Now, the last drink, this is the one that you'll have access to in the takeaway at the end of this session. This is the Zacapa split-based old fashioned. Now, the one thing I didn't mention is that where Zacapa plays incredibly well is, yes, replace other brown spirits with Zacapa for a really easy way to influence very classic style recipes. And that's why we see the Boulevardier, the Manhattan, and the old fashioned doing exceptionally well with Zacapa. But where we can really get to play around is split base. Now, this drink is a split base of equal portions, so between 30 and 45 mils or 1 to 1.5 ounces of Zacapa 23 and Calvados. But you can do this with Zacapa and Irish whiskey, Zacapa and cognac, Zacapa and bourbon, Zacapa and Lagavulin. So you can get as creative as you want to amplify the flavors. And we're just adding, whatever sugar you have on hand. Again, I'm using maple here, but because I love the flavor together, choose an aromatic bitters that really speaks to you and inspires you. In this case, I'm using a root beer bitters, and then orange peel just for garnish. Couldn't be simpler than that. And all of these are great with a side serve of, whether it's a tapas or, a canapé of some kind, or even those crunchy green olives.
Thank you, Lauren. Sorry for being so trigger happy. Very excited to get
a tight timeline. I know that. It's all good.
Excited to get to the food at the very, very end. But before we go there, we're going to go to 3 more serves from another amazing bartender, which is Lynnette. And Lynnette, I know you've described and put these together with a good dose of versatility for both the at-home and for the restaurant.
Absolutely. So this first cocktail, it's, again, a simple riff on an old-fashioned. We use our patate, which is the beautiful weaving from the Zacapa bottle. I can just dress my old-fashioned glass, and it looks really nice and elegant. So it's a simple way, at home to impress someone, or even in the restaurant. It just adds something elegant. With this cocktail, what I wanted to do was kind of lean into some of the flavor profiles. Similarly, apparently Lauren and I think very much in the same line, or we're just, fall and the flavors that are really present right now. With this one, I took apple cider just your beautiful fresh pressed apple cider that is happening right now in all the regions that grow apples. Actually, in Guatemala, there are actually 23 varieties of apples that grow in the highlands, which I was like, Zacapa 23 apples, boom. It's a beautiful thing that works out together. But I reduce it down with a little bit of brown sugar to make a syrup. And then at the end of that, I fortify it with a little bit of sherry. And I'm using Oloroso sherry, a little richer, brings in some of those like more prune, getting towards your fig notes. And those things go really well with apples. So this is really much a very autumnal style of cocktail. And then again, just simply adding that with a few different types of bitters. So I have some ginger bitters in here and then some aromatic bitters. And those just again are popping up some of the flavor profiles of cinnamon, a little bit of the other kind of cloves, and then bringing in that ginger element. But I didn't want the ginger to be so overpowering that it was taking over. So I wanted to complement the rum. So this is just a really simple stir drink. The apple cider sherry syrup is also super easy. Like I said, it's usually about a half cup or so of fresh apple cider, a cup of sugar in the rye is one that has a little bit of brown in it, not completely packed brown sugar. And then at the end, once that melts together, I just add 1 ounce of that Oloroso sherry that fortifies it, keep it refrigerated. So it's kind of making your own little kind of vermouth style syrup that you can have. You can play around with that with other parts of the cocktail. We can move on to the next one. So this one is Las Barricas, and this is a cocktail that I created to really emphasize what is so special about Zacapa 23. So every element in this cocktail is connected to part of the Aged Above the Clouds experience. And then with the smoke, I am further enhancing that visual for you and for our guests at the table. So it starts with 1 ounce of Zacapa 23. So that is going to be basically the liquid that is going through the different barrels. I then put about 3/4 ounce of Oloroso sherry again. That is one of the casks that we go into in the second part of the aging, and that's bringing in almond notes and some of these more dried fruit notes, apricots, and all those things that sherry bring. And then I just add a touch, just about 1/4 ounce of Pedro Jimenez or PX sherry, which brings in those fig prune notes, and that coffee, and that's the very last finish on Zacapa. So we start though in used oak barrels, American oak. So you know, I don't have any American oak in here yet. So what I'm doing is with that smoke element that's coming in is that I'm using really high-end grade oak chips, using the smoker, and that's giving that last little finish on it. And this reminds me of how, you know, Lorena starts with used oak barrels. The rum rests in there for a couple of years, and then that rum is taken out, and then they're recharged. There's a smoke. So you get all that beautiful lignin and all that activated aroma. So you get that wonderful charred, beautiful smell. So that aromas is here, the visual is here, and that's how we bring that oak aging in. So it's kind of like a little cheat sheet cocktail to how to remember which barrels Zacapa is aged in. So it's American oak, Oloroso sherry, and then Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. And then the last cocktail, this is the one that will go in your kit. This is just kind of a simple way to elevate, you know, Grace talked about her favorite drinks and styles are, you know, Zacapa Manhattans or old fashions. And I just kind of wanted to bring in a simple drink that kind of helps you manipulate some of your ingredients really simply at home. And you can make all different styles of Zacapa Manhattans. I started doing this kind of cocktail playing around with infusing my sweet vermouth with things like chai and then using it with Zacapa. In this one, I'm going right towards my figs. Right now, I'm just obsessed with like these kind of flavors and aromas. So dried figs are what I use in order to impart more flavor. They're really great. You chop them up, you put them in with the vermouth, let them sit until the desired flavor. You know, if you're gonna do like a cold steep, you know, you can leave this for a full 24 hours. Just chop it up fine, put it in a jar with a lid. Put the sweet vermouth in there, give it a few shakes every once in a while. The next day, strain out those figs. Don't throw them away because you can actually take those, dehydrate them, or eat them as a snack and caramelize them. And kind of like Lauren had earlier, like they could be a little like sidecar snack. But then I'm just building a traditional Manhattan here with Zacapa 23, then 1.5 ounces, 3/4 ounce of that fig infused sweet vermouth, 2 dashes of the bittered Sloane Kensington bitters. So those are leaning towards more aromatic, but they have a lot more spice notes that I think go really well with fig. And then again, you can either use some of those figs that you already soaked in the sweet vermouth, or you can get more dried figs or use some fresh figs if they're available for your garnish. And then you have this kind of beautiful cocktail that is super simple. But again, play around with those flavors in your sweet vermouth and use this recipe to kind of bring other flavors and aromas in.
Absolutely love that. And we're literally just coming to the end of our fig season on this side of the Atlantic. And it was only last weekend, I think it was a caramel custard tart we made with some of the fresh figs on top.
Wow.
That would be absolutely perfect alongside that, even though it's only early afternoon here on the Dublin side. Amazing. So we've seen the drinks and the amazing creativity of both Lynnette and Lauren. And I love the versatility there that, again, all those drinks have a place. They can be easily made at home or on a restaurant menu. And there's a certain timeless quality to them. But we are going to talk now about the food and the amazing opportunity that's there, both coming into the holiday season and in any restaurant or bar. And to do that, I sent Grace an email there a few days ago saying I need 3 beautiful dishes that could grace any table, excuse the pun, alongside some beautiful Zacapa.
Yes, and you know what? It's the season to celebrate. Even I think we have to celebrate life right now. The fact that we're surviving and we're alive, and you know, it is the holidays after all coming up. You know, I love empanadas. It's something so simple. I usually have a lot more empanadas during this time of the year because it's getting colder. And I just want that little bit extra more fatness and heartier. But I think that also empanadas are something that when I go to the restaurant, I allow myself to have, you know, an empanada here or there, even though I love making them and I've mastered the art of the repulgue, which is, as you know, Mark, it's like a whole thing for us empanada makers. The repulgue, it's the edge of the empanada, and it's like the Argentinas make it a certain way, Venezuelans have it a certain way, Chileans have it in a certain way. But I love empanadas to be paired with Zacapa because, you know, in an empanada, you have so many flavors in there, right? Especially in this one is an Argentinian one, but you have the beef and then you have the onions, which have been a little bit caramelized and they've been deglazed with red wine. So you're getting, you know, that crunch, but you're getting the sweetness, yet the acidity of deglaze, you know, when I deglaze it with red wine, but then you're also getting olives in there. And so it's all these different layers of flavor. And then you have the sweetness and flakiness of the dough. So I think that for me, you know, it goes so well with Zacapa because first of all, Zacapa is going to enhance the sweetness of the dough, right? It's going to be like a little celebration there. And then you're like, oh, okay, wait, there is that sweet and sour saltiness of the dough. And then you're going to cut through the fat. Zacapa is going to help us cut through that little bit of that fat of the beef, but then it's going to help us enhance all the other flavors. So I think it's a very simple thing, but that you'll be pleasantly surprised. You'll never have an empanada the same way again if you have it with Zacapa. You think you've had an empanada before, but if you have it with Zacapa, it's a completely different experience and one that it's memorable. Thank me later. And then here's a dish that I absolutely love because it's a duck in guava sauce with berries, you know, assorted berries. I've made it with all kinds of different seasonal berries. This one is with blackberries. And, you know, first of all, I love duck. I especially, you know, a well-cooked duck that you have that crispiness in the outside, you have that little bit of fat, and then you have this beautiful guava sauce, which the guava could be very sweet, but then with the berries, it's a kind of like a very beautiful balance of this of sweet and sour, which honestly, I love this dish, and I would love to one day have Lauren and Lynnette tell me like which specific cocktails goes with this, because I usually have it with Edición Negra because I like the extra smokiness of it. I think it complements it super well, and it just takes the dish to the next level. And again, I think that one of the reasons why I love this perfect marriage between Zacapa and this food is because, you know, this is a very rich dish. It feels light, but it's, you know, duck can be very rich. And once you have it with an Edición Negra, you know, the smokiness will just cut through that fat. And it's just, it's kind of like a hug. You're like, oh, okay, thank you. I needed that. I didn't know I needed that hug, but now I'm very, very happy. I'm happier than before. So that for me it's what I have for this dish. It's actually looks very sophisticated, but it's very simple. It's just about cooking that duck beautiful. I like to cook it on a bed of salt because it's going to keep releasing all that fat, and you have to render that fat a couple of times, and you use that duck fat for French fries, and it's amazing. Or even just so I think you get a lot for your money here, because it's like, oh, I'm rendering all this fat and I can save it for my French fries, or even just some beautiful potatoes. You can use that beautiful duck fat. It's just a matter of how you're slicing the duck, you're fanning it, and the presentation, which is super simple: sauce in the bottom, fanning a duck, and just having some beautiful edible flowers and microgreens. Yeah, is that all? Is that all, Mark? I need to say about duck and berries and guava. Oh, you know what? I also find what?
You had me with the roast potatoes and duck fat.
Exactly. And I think that also, you know, I do find a guava notes in Zacapa. Call me crazy, but I do feel it, maybe because I'm a guava obsessed. So I think it just goes beautiful with it. And then my favorite dessert, my childhood favorite, it's a coconut flan. You know, it's a custard. It's a beautiful custard. It's very silky and smooth, yet this dish, just looking at it, makes me super happy. And come on, who doesn't love coconut and rum? Like, please. And if you don't like coconut, you have to talk to me. I have to send you on a coconut rehab, because I'm coconut obsessed. I also think, you know, you can make this with a flan, even just a flan. I think that it complements itself beautifully. I love it with the 23, but I also love it with the XO at the end of the meal. Especially that, you know, if you're gonna have it with the XO, that cognac, it's gonna be so beautiful with this dessert. I think a coconut flan is a very simple yet very sophisticated dessert, because if that custard is not beautifully made, then it could be like, it's too dense, it's too much. So I try not to put too much sugar in there. I kind of tone down the sugar. I let the coconut shine, and then I let Zacapa do the rest, because normally when I serve the dessert, I do serve it with Zacapa. And I think the cacao notes in the rum and the vanilla notes just complement this dish beautifully. I actually do add a little bit of vanilla in here in my you know, in my coconut flan, but I think those vanilla notes get enhanced with Zacapa. So I think that you're going to be very, very happy. Try making all of these during the holidays, and you can thank us later.
Absolutely beautiful. I think there's some serious inspiration there in terms of the flavors that are running through Zacapa, what you can do with food, what you can do in the glass, particularly the opportunity at home. Again, for me, I'm not a bartender, so I'm always interested to see little simple serves I can put together at home, because I wouldn't have the skills of Lauren or Lynnette, but you can
Me neither. And I always think about them. I'm like, what would they do?
I was gonna say, save your vanilla pods when you make your flan, and just infuse them into your vanilla sugar and make a vanilla old fashioned to go with that duck. I think that was the pairing I did. And then you can like save the beans and, you know, dehydrate them into a pretty garnish. But like that pairing is so nice, because I remember when I tasted that dish when we were making this shoot, and the way the berries and guava with vanilla and Zacapa all come together, it's like, oh, it made me so
yeah.
happy.
I love it. I know. I think I'm gonna virtually do it and send you guys a little piece for y'all as a holiday gift. Like maybe I have to find some new technology to be able to be like, let me send it to Europe. Let me send it to Lynnette upstate.
I brought all the kit. You can't see it; it's around the corner here. But I have all the kit because this holiday I'm actually going to sit down and try and be a bartender for a couple of nights and see how I get on.
Good. We should do it together and have them on speed dial. Have Lauren and Lynnette in speed dial.
That can be the next piece we do online for a webinar. I'd say all the equipment and not a clue. Before I move in, they're absolutely beautiful, Grace, particularly the coconut plant. Have it all day. I just want to talk very briefly about what we did in the restaurant. So just from, you've seen how Zacapa can work with food. You've seen the beautiful serves. I just want to quickly note what we did in the restaurant last year from a business point of view and the opportunity that is there. So again, we have a very small restaurant. Literally top left here was our entire team this time last year. 9, maybe 10 of us, 11 on a service. We didn't have a full cocktail program. We did obviously have our wine, our sommelier, and our spirits. But I just saw an opportunity just from working more with Lauren and Lynnette and those kind of people of how we could put something together. So we had Lauren over. She designed 4 cocktails, one of which you'll see bottom right is the Zacapa serve we did. We didn't have to hire any extra staff, but Lauren was able to have a look at a service in the restaurant, see how our day was structured, and come up with these cocktails that were obviously delicious, beautiful, have some great ingredients. They have Zacapa 23, but that could be produced without having to hire or make any incredibly extra expenses to the restaurant. So she designed them they were high quality, but they were pre-batch almost, and they could be done during service. So someone could come in off the floor, spend 3 or 4 minutes in the bar, put them together. And we put it on an aperitif list. So the first thing the customers got in the restaurant was no longer the menu, it was the aperitif list, as it should be in any top end restaurant for me. And where they were up against things like champagne and more classic aperitifs, where it can get into years and vintages and non-vintages and long French names, people were very eager to go for one of the 3 cocktails that Lauren designed. And what we noticed was it took an hour every week for one of our front of house team to come in 1 hour earlier, put together the mise en place. We sold on average, we have a 40-seat restaurant, we do 10 services a week. We sold on average 8 cocktails a day. That's 40 cocktails a week. And that, when it came to over a year, that ended up in extra gross profit of about 35,000 euro. And having done that, we also increased the experience for the customer. We got more lag time at the table. We increased the spend per head, improved our offering, and improved our bank balance by the guts of 35,000, which is no mean feat, for no extra investment. That translated as a full chef de partie salary for a year, or X amount of truffles, or X amount of caviar or ingredients, or been able to invest in even more of our spirits, or hire, as we have done in the new year, a full-time person from behind the bar. So the cocktails are actually starting to pay for themselves to influence our bar program. And we were very lucky as well, having put this list in, that it was part of the success of going from 1 to 2 Michelin stars. So it was just a nice way to frame something we did in a very small restaurant in Dublin, putting it together with the right people. It literally was, I don't know, a couple of emails, Lauren, and a flight over from Vancouver, which you love doing anyway.
Yeah.
And the bar team love it, and they keeps creative, and it's a great connection between the kitchen and our front of house, because sometimes there's ingredients now that can't be used in the kitchen that will be used behind the bar, and vice versa. So it's made it more of a team, and it showcased, I think, where the culture is going at the moment, where food and drink and Zacapa and cocktails in particular have a place beside each other and are extremely valuable for any business, or, as I'm going to come to here, cooking at home. So I just wanted to do 3 little recipes like Grace had done, that are inspired by the flavors of Zacapa that I could see. I know we're talking to a US audience here. What I'd love to do if I was over in New York and I was sitting down in a bar or restaurant. The first is just a little lamb burger. It's a take on something I had a few years ago, I'll never forget, from Zion Foods in St. Mark's Place in New York, where they do like a flatbread with a cumin spiced lamb patty and some jalapenos. Kind of I think it's a Western Chinese cuisine is their style, from the old Silk Road. One of those things I'll never forget, sitting out on the street in New York having it. So again, it's lamb patty, brioche bun, jalapenos, red onions, a little bit of mayonnaise. And And for me, it's when I think of Zacapa, I think of caramel. So that's where my brioche comes in. I caramelize it nicely. There's loads of butter in there. It's got that lovely hint of sweetness in the dough. The lamb patty is lightly spiced with the cumin, which is one of my favorite spices, which I personally feel goes very well with the flavor palette of Zacapa. And then you've just got that bit of background heat from jalapenos, again, from the region or near the region where Zacapa is produced. And again, it's just a delicious bite that would fit into a very simple casual bar or casual restaurant. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be incredibly simple either. Zacapa and a beautiful serve or cocktail like our bartenders produced is perfect for something like this. Then I've got a second example, which is a little bit more restauranty. So if you're running a restaurant that's more fine dining or high end, there's still plenty of ways it can fit in. This was one of the dishes that I did alongside Zacapa, where I tried to, I suppose, tell the story of the flavors in the glass using food. Didn't actually use Zacapa. And what you have is that roast duck again. So myself and Grace obviously have the same thought process. Lovely rendered down fat. I love duck. It's lovely and rich. It's very, it's accessible all over the world at a certain quality. And what I've done is I've just roasted it off, and then I've glazed it in a little star anise jam made with seaweed jam as well. So we just buy it in any Asian grocery. I couldn't tell you what's in it, but it's incredibly delicious. And it's got seaweed and soy sauce. So I put some star anise through there, brushed it on top.
What are those things?
I love those things. I don't know what the writing says, but it's delicious. A couple of crushed pistachios on top. Again, pistachios is one of those really sweet, buttery, nutty products that really ties into something like Zacapa Rum. A piece of fennel then on the right-hand side, just been confied, the actual bulb. So I love anise, and I think anise is one of those background flavors, particularly sweet anise, that you get in something like Zacapa after a while in the glass when it warms up and gets going. It's been confied in more of the star anise butter and the duck fat, again, that was rendered off. So where Grace is using it for those amazing roast potatoes, I've just stuck it in to confit the fennel bulb. A little bit of fennel on top, and then the sauce for me brings it all together. So I always think of Lorena in the sense of a master blender is very much like a master chef, and it's like making a sauce. And where Zacapa might go through different barrels to get different infusions of flavors, a chef will create a stock and then reduce it down and infuse it with more ingredients, reduce it down, add your roast trimmings of the duck in there to intensify the flavor. And then you're left with a beautiful sauce in the same way as you would make something like the rum. This is a classic à l'orange because I just like classic dishes, presenting them in a little bit of a modern way. So we've got some star anise in there, some orange peel, a little bit of cointreau. This is when I start talking a little bit more like the bartenders and how I see that we really are basically the same. We just put them on plates as opposed to glasses. So the cointreau, shallot, star anise in the base, little bit of brown chicken stock. All the duck wings go in there so we don't waste anything, gives a bit of body. Reduce it down, some orange zest at the very end, a little bit of lemon juice just to cut through the richness, balance it all out in the same way as Zacapa would be in the glass. And you have what is essentially duck à l'orange, but tailored to the flavors and the narratives of Zacapa. And then lastly is going to be your takeaway for anyone who's watching this. It's basically my favorite dessert in the world that I eat way too much of every single week. I can see Lauren shouting in the camera.
Yum.
There's no such thing as
Can
eating.
you have us over?
Just keep going, Mark. It's so good.
It's just sticky toffee pudding. I've added a little bit of light spice into it. So it's got allspice in there. So cinnamon, clove, those kind of things. Again, very natural tie into any rum, but particularly a quality one like Zacapa 23. I've added a little bit of lemon juice into the caramel sauce as I'm glazing it, just to give it, again, I don't want anything to be too glowingly sweet because you can't get any of the flavor then. So the lemon juice and the sauce will just balance out again, exactly the same way as Zacapa appears in the glass. And then vanilla, anything that's hot and cake and gooey with cold ice cream is a winner for me. So ice cream goes on top, and that's just been classically flavored with a little bit of vanilla. So again, something you can make at home. The recipe's there. And the idea for the cake is that you actually cook it in a standard loaf tin, and you can keep it for 3 or 4 days, cut off a slice and warm it up in the sauce as you need it. And then I think everyone kind of has some sort of vanilla ice cream or along the lines in the base of their freezer for years. So that can go on top. And again, even in the restaurant, it's if you have something like this on the menu and your customer is asking for a recommendation, beautiful service Zacapa is perfect to fit into that. And I think it's just 6 nice dishes and 6 amazing drinks there to showcase how Zacapa can be utilized, be it at home or in your restaurant.
Amazing.
Yay.
Mark, it looks so good. And I think as now that we've seen all the food and beverage happening on the screen, it's important to talk about a few other things. And everyone should be able to reach out to us on Instagram. If you have questions about something specific, I mean, you can go to the @Zacapa Rum USA Instagram and send direct messages, but it might take a little longer to respond. So definitely, I'm going to start from where things happen on my screen. You can contact Mark at Mark Moriarty 1, Chef Grace Ramirez, drinks at 6. So that's the number 6, not the word 6. And then for me, Lauren Mote. And if you ever have any questions or you want to riff ideas, have a little brainstorm on Zacapa, just send us a note on Instagram. The great thing about connecting with us and staying connected on Instagram, if you end up creating a really beautiful drink or a dish or a pairing or an occasion where Zacapa has been used, just tag us directly in your photo. We'd love to stay connected in that way. And then the other thing I was going to say is that companies like Diageo, which is parent company, and Zacapa Rum specifically as a brand, we're leading the way in the way that food and beverage is showing up together in restaurants and bars of all levels, and even at home, just reimagining before and after a meal or happy hour, dessert time, or even just for fun in the middle of the day. So the opportunities are endless, and it's looking far beyond traditional restaurant and bar settings. But what can we do in terms of takeout? What can we do in terms of virtual classes, virtual get-togethers, events that are limited to 6 people? We've been talking about ways to enrich all of those experiences. So do keep in touch with us on that.
And I will tie up by just thanking everyone for their time and putting these together. I know it's hard at the start, but it's great when we are talking about our passion, but they aren't going to go anywhere yet, because do remember, we are going to go into our live Q&A session next, and there have been plenty of questions coming in, where we will be joined by the fabulous master distiller of Ron Zacapa, Lorena Vasquez. Anyone who has to jump off, all these sessions are going to be uploaded. They're going to be on DBA, they're going to be on the Zacapa Rum YouTube, and they're going to be doing a specific posting on food and drink pairings to the Pinterest board. And I have been told that everything will be available at Zacapa Rum USA. That's for all the handles from YouTube through Pinterest to DBA and Instagram. And the next session, if anyone has any interest and has enjoyed our company, will be on the 11th of January 2021 at 4 p.m. EST. And that will be again with Lorena Vasquez and the brilliant Lynnette. So thank you very much for tuning in.